Yeah, certainly nobody's going to get hurt if they run in basketball shoes for a couple minutes, then walk a few minutes. I mean, you could run barefoot, right, with nothing. But yeah, any shoes, dress shoes. I mean, there are people that run marathons in dress shoes, right? They're world records, fastest marathon in a tuxedo or something like that. But yeah, and I do think though, if you only buy one thing, it should be shoes.
Welcome back to the Sign of Good Health podcast. Today I'm talking with Bruce Palmquist. He's a physics professor and he also actually enjoys running for fun, believe it or not. So, Bruce, you want to introduce yourself and kind of talk about your fitness background?
Sure. I'm Bruce Palmquist, and I am a college professor, which seemingly does not relate to my fitness background, but actually does. And Alex probably knows this well. I mean, I think, a fairly strong correlation between education background and fitness level. Not a lot of professors in the NBA or NFL, but there are a lot of super fit 50, 60, and even 70-year-old professors. Um, I'd say I started exercising somewhat seriously, maybe college. High school, I was on the track team one year. Alex's dad and I did it for a little bit. Our history teacher was the coach, and he tried to recruit a bunch of people, I think, to find some sort of diamond in the rough, which I was not. But I ran then. That was my junior year in high school, and then I didn't run for a while. And then my senior year in college, my roommate was a runner, so that's when I started running fairly seriously. And then also I would occasionally lift weights because, as you know, when you're on a college campus, you've got that nice weight room, and it's free for students, so you don't get that opportunity in real life. Good free gym. Um, so yeah, now I usually run 3 days a week, maybe bike 1 or 2 days a week, and by bike, not super serious, maybe 15 miles or so. And I just have a hybrid bike, sort of a light mountain bike, but I wouldn't really want to take it down a mountain. And then I did lift weights before 1 or 2 days a week. Now I actually use some of those super bands. Have you heard of those? They're
No.
uh, yeah, well, I think that's kind of a generic term. They're different brand names, but it's sort of like the little bands you can use around your legs to work your hips. But they've got really long versions of them as well. Actually, in the gym, I think a lot of people use them for pull-up assist.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
you've seen that. You wrap it around the bar, then you put your feet on it. But you can
Yeah.
use them. Yeah, you can also use them for other resistance exercises, other pulling and pushing.
Yeah. I think, like you said, like the super bands is a brand. I think I just usually call them resistance bands or elastic bands or whatever. Um,
Right. But maybe
so
if you call them super bands enough, they'll sponsor your podcast.
there you go. Hit me up. Although speaking of bands, uh, I just recently got these Port Holic bands, and they're really good for working the extensors in your hands, since we're always like gripping stuff really tight, and sometimes that can cause wrist issues. So it's basically much more heavy duty than putting a bunch of rubber bands around your finger and then you just spread them.
Oh,
So
okay.
I really like them. Um, Not sponsored, but just recent purchase. So, so when you're doing your running, like what does that workout look like pace and distance and all that?
Yeah. Well, of course, pace has gotten slower as the years go on. The last time I got a checkup, I think it was maybe 3 years ago. And it was the first time I'd seen that doctor. And he was telling me that, he said, yeah, these guys that come in, they're runners, and they say my mile time has dropped by 2 minutes from 20 years ago. What's wrong with me? But now when I run, I kind of have a standard. I sort of have three standard things that I do with little variations. So one of the standard things is a 6 mile run where most of it is on kind of a gravel trail. Used to be a rail line, sort of like the loose line trail, but a gravel trail. And sort of depends on the time of day. If I do it first thing in the morning, which is what I usually do, because otherwise I can get lazy and slack off. Yeah, I'm in the 10-minute per mile range. If I do it when I'm looser and I do more of a warm up, I'm still maybe in the 9-minute per mile range. Another one of my standard things is we've got a small hill near our house that is about maybe a eighth of a mile or so up, so pretty small. And I'll go up and down that 8 to 10 times. And then on the weekends, I'll run longer. I'm going to do a marathon coming up. I'll go up to 20 miles, but usually my standard long runs may be 8 to 10. I try to not do the same thing. I mean, if you're gonna exercise, of course, something's better than nothing. But I think just doing the same slow 4 mile run a day is good, but not great. And of course, I'm not doing great either, but I'm doing perhaps better than good.
Yeah, well, and like what happens, like doing the same thing does have value because over time you'll just get more efficient at it. But there's going to be that point of diminishing returns, and you need to keep challenging yourself. Now, where people get confused is there are a lot of variables you can manipulate for that. It's not just like with weightlifting, you don't just need to go heavier. You can go with better form. You can do a denser workout, which means you have less rest. You can do different variations of the exercise. Like there's a lot of or different equipment. Um, so, and then running, I'm assuming it's pretty similar with like, you got different paces, you got different distances, you got different like cadences, um,
Different surfaces. I
terrain.
actually, I actually just discovered um, an irrigation canal because we live in a fairly small town, about 20,000 people. We live on the edge of town. So, I go one way and it's into town, the other way, hardly any people and any cars.
Mhm.
Um, but this irrigation canal is kind of rocky. So I have to sort of step around a little bit and then I go slower. But I think, I don't know, would you consider that something quote unquote different? Because by stepping sideways some, you're working the muscles a little bit different. Going
Yeah.
slower, yet still challenging yourself, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, and it sounds like in those kind of situations, you're going to be much more conscious of your movement instead of just kind of zoning out and running in a straight line for however long.
But yeah, I can't zone out because for some part of this trail, I don't know, they must have got a deal on this super sharp basalt rock, like you'd get from a volcano if someone took a hammer and chopped that. It's sharp. I'm sometimes worried if a rock has shifted because of some temperature, water change, or that some sharp rock's gonna jut up and poke through my shoe.
Mm,
But yeah, that's right. I have to be super conscious because if I just zone out, yeah, I'd twist an ankle for sure.
yeah. So speaking of injuries, just like, do you want to talk about like how you touched on it a little bit, how your training has changed over time? Like, are there considerations as you've gotten older?
Yeah, I think, well, of course, there's just the natural slowing down, which I know natural slowing down probably as a fitness expert, you don't like to hear that because a lot of people use it as an excuse. Uh, but I mean, it is true, right? Even Serena Williams is slowing down.
Mm,
So yeah, so I've slowed down that way. But I think the biggest change that occurred from when I was younger, if I had something in mind to do and I couldn't do it, like I was going to run fast or long, and I couldn't do it because something changed in my schedule. Like if I thought I had to have an hour and I only had a half hour, I'd just say, well, I was going to do an hour. I can't do an hour, so I'm not going to do anything. I'll just
mm,
add an hour to tomorrow. And of course, sometimes I did, but usually that's not a recipe for success.
mm.
So now I have certainly recognized that something is better than nothing. If there are times when I want to run, but I overslept or something came up, I will then run shorter. There's a 3 mile route near our house. But if I do that, then I just run a little bit faster. So that's one of the things I've become more flexible. I haven't been so rigid and I wanted to do this. I can't do this, so I'm not going to do anything. I think
Yeah, that reminds me.
that's
There was
one
a
change.
time, sorry, there was a time where I was working out with my dad at a gym and the power went out. And this guy started like flipping out. This has ruined my whole effing day. And it's like he just, what, like you're saying, like he wasn't there where you are with like it's okay. Um, I mean, good on him that he's committed to his workout, but it's like there's more to life than that. So,
Right.
um, so let's talk a little bit about like your mindset for running. Um, just like what goes through your head when you are running.
When I'm running, well, actually, I like to listen to podcasts while I run. So that's why I like the gravel trail, not the one that I just discovered that's super rocky, because then I can't zone out. Although I do listen to podcasts then as well. But um, what goes through my head? I do use it as a time to kind of relax my brain. And it's funny. I mean, it's not funny to you, but I think it'd be funny to someone who doesn't exercise much that to say that you exercise to relax. A lot of people think of exercise as work.
Mhm.
And if you're doing something that you like I don't really like running on the treadmill, although I have, but I like running outside because you're seeing different things. So at the beginning, I kind of focus on my form because I usually run in the morning and I feel super inefficient. I do a little bit of warm up. I probably should warm up more, but I do some hip warm ups and then I walk maybe a city block to my starting point. So at the beginning, I feel kind of clumsy. And so I think about my form then. But once I get into the groove, so to speak, I don't worry about it. I will oftentimes on this gravel trail, there are power poles roughly every eighth of a mile. So sometimes I'll run to two power poles, so roughly a quarter mile, and then go slower for a couple poles just to break things up.
Mhm.
Um, or there's a road roughly every mile, because when you live out in the country, usually it's pretty standardized. So there's a road about every mile. So I might try to run faster between two of the roads. So I do mostly zoning out, but I do, I'm not continually thinking about my form because, again, I think that can be counterproductive. You don't want to overthink your exercise, but you don't want to just be mindless either and do the same thing all the time.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely like the I don't know if there's the official term for it, but it's like a model of learning that talks about like you're you don't know what you're doing, and then you kind of can consciously do it, and then you adapt and get better at it, and then you get to the point where you can unconsciously do it, and then the motivational. Then you can't do it. Practice till you can't do it wrong. So
It's
like with running, like you've been doing it for a couple decades, so you can just kind of go.
right. And doing something for a couple decades, yeah, you can just go, but I do think it is important to do more than just go.
Yeah. Well,
Just
and
going is better than nothing, but more, and even if that just means one of my three runs a week, I run a bit faster between a few of the power poles, right? That's something. And I'm already doing something rather than nothing. So now I'm doing something a little bit better rather than something.
yeah,
But
and I know for myself, I do enjoy the like I'll just call it mental activity that doing some kind of interval type thing creates. Like it occupies your brain, so you're not thinking about like I'm tired, like um, so that's there. Yeah, like what you're saying with just picking a distance and going and mixing that up like that. That makes sense to me.
and what you talked about, there actually is a theory of learning. I think the first name was Lev, last name definitely is Vygotsky, a Russian, talked about the zone of proximal development. So if when you're learning something new, if it's too easy, it's not something new, or it might be something new, but it's just unbelievably similar. So
Mhm.
you know a bunch of phone numbers, you can learn one more phone number, right? That's not it. But you also don't want to study something that's well above you. So
Mhm.
you don't want to teach kindergartners calculus, although there's probably one or two kindergartners in the world that could do it. But typically, that's not a recipe for success. But
Yeah.
teach kindergartners fractions and have them think about what does it mean to have a half a pizza? And if you cut the pizza in two, does that mean automatically each one is a half? What if one of those is just a tiny chunk and then the other part is the rest? So
Mhm.
those sort of things are going beyond what they understand, but it's not super abstract. And I think fitness is the same way, right? I Well, yeah, I'm not going to all of a sudden do something really, really different and be successful. I can get to the really, really different, just like plenty of kindergartners do learn calculus eventually. But at that time, they can't do it. Just like at this time, a lot of people who are running a little bit can't do a marathon, but that doesn't mean they can never do a marathon. It just means that next weekend they won't be doing a marathon.
Yeah, like I know there's, I don't know if there's a specific program or it's just something that a lot of people have made. It's like the couch to 5K programs that seem to be pretty popular. Um, so it's like getting somebody that's completely sedentary, building them up to that point where they can do a 5K, which is like 3 miles, 3.1 or whatever.
Yeah, 3.1 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. A lot of people do that. Uh, our younger son, who's your brother's age, almost exactly, he's the one that gave you your frisbee. What was this, a PG or PG-13 rated
You,
podcast?
you can swear if you need to.
Okay, yeah, well, you know what I'm going to say, right? He's the one that gave you the nickname "Throw the damn frisbee." But he's a good runner, and we did a 5K in Seattle, the last one before he went off to college, and there were about 1,000 people. And I told him, I said, you're going to finish in the top 50. He said, no way, I'm not going to finish in the top 50. I think he finished in the top 15, just because he's not super fast. He had 5K, I think he finished in 20 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that,
Wow,
which he
that's
was
like
on the high
almost.
school cross country team. And for high school cross country, and our high school has a pretty good team, that's not super fast. So he was used to seeing you being average to below average for that. But
Mhm.
then he stepped out in the general population, and I was a little bit familiar with it. I probably knew he was going to finish higher than top 50, but I didn't
But
want to
you're just ballparking, yeah.
be overly ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I think I finished in 24:30, and I nearly finished in the top 50. So yeah, lots of people do it. And all those people that were slower, I mean, they're still doing it, right?
Yeah.
There's in a race, it's only a race for a few people. Maybe you're racing against the clock or you're racing against yourself. But I read somewhere, you don't look at the people in front of you, and don't even look at the people behind you, but look at the people who aren't even running, right? And of course, some of those people who aren't running just ran the day before, so you're not automatically better than them. But the point is, well, you are better than them because you have your own podcast. So you should get licensing for the Prince song "Sign of the Times,"
There you go.
or the group, the Swedish heavy metal, or I don't know if they're heavy metal, the Swedish rock group Europe. They also have a song called "Sign of the Times," and that might be a little bit cheaper to get that song
Yeah, like,
licensing for a Europe song than a Prince song.
well, I tried to get a Styx song for my autism documentary, and they wanted $1,400 a year. It's like, and I told them like this is a college project,
Uh-huh.
But so I did not do that. Uh, but
Let me see if I can I guess, is it a well-known Styx song?
I think so.
Oh, let's see, autism. The first one that came to mind was Grand Illusion,
Yeah.
but that's almost insulting. But I had to say it because it's a podcast and we're getting into witty banter. Um, yeah, it's not very good podcast right now. You're losing clicks. So
Yeah.
me sitting here thinking, so you can just tell me.
Well, it's fooling yourself or angry
Oh,
young man.
okay. Yep.
My dad talked about how like the lyrics just made him kind of resonated with me growing up because it's like, see the world through your cynical eyes. You're a
Mhm.
troubled young man, I can tell. You've got it all through the palm of your you and it's like, you got the potential, but you're just struggling with the difficulties of life. And so,
Right. But then you worked through it, you became a blue collar man, and everything was perfect.
Yeah. For the 4 people that get that reference, like, Blue Collar Man is another song. So, um, so let's see. So let's talk. You were talking a little bit about weightlifting and stuff. So let's talk more about like what does the supplemental training look like? Like, I'm assuming a major goal for you is preventing injuries.
Yes. So I actually, in the past few months, I've been using those bands that are unfortunately not sponsored yet. And then also some of the bands, the elastic bands that have the handles on either end.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you can hanging from the door right there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's mainly preventing injury, and I like those straps. I know we've talked about the straps before too. They're tough to standardize because with the elasticity, we've got Hooke's law for the 4 people listening that know about Hooke's law, how the responding force is proportional to the stretch. But yeah, so if you stretch it 1 meter versus 1.2 meters, it's a little bit different. But I like it because you get some stability in there. Because when you're stretching your arms out, if you're not exactly parallel to the straps, your arms are being pulled up or down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the injuries occur. Almost nobody gets injured in life because their bicep muscle is not strong enough or their quadriceps muscles are not strong enough. They get injured because of the connective tissue, or they're not supple enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, recently I had a right foot injury. I don't know exactly what it was, because injuries, when you read an article about an athlete getting injured, they say that she did this, right? And there's a simple name, and it's probably much more than that, but the typical person doesn't want to read that. But when it's you, then I don't know what this is quite, and the doctor doesn't really know either. Again, which doesn't make the news, that doctors are often not exactly sure what is wrong with you. But yeah, I had some issues with my right foot, and I really liked the physical therapist because the doctor that I went to just to give me the recommendation, he basically said, you're going in for your foot. But the physical therapist really saw that the bigger issue to work on was more um, overall leg strength. So he gave me some good exercises like the curtsy squat by holding so by pulling on the elastic strap, the super band, remember, sponsor this person, pulling on the strap and then doing a curtsy squat, or holding a kettlebell and then doing kind of exaggerated step walk like this. So you're balancing on your foot.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to strengthen the connective tissue. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer, right? Can you really strengthen connective tissue?
I, I'll say yes, because like
Okay.
the Russian kettlebell guys talk about that. So
Yeah, and right, and we can believe everything that comes from Russia. Vladimir, sponsor this podcast.
there you go.
Alex doesn't care.
Well, the famous
Your
guy,
rupees are good enough for him.
yeah, the Pavel. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Like Tutsi, it's like TS something, but he's like the big head honcho authority on kettlebells and made them popular in the U.S. and whatever. So
Right. So balance has been balance and kind of, well, I guess maybe generically balance has become a more important part of my exercise, because I never was a good bench presser, and I'm not going to be now. And that, of course, isn't even that important,
for
right? Who
running,
cares what you can bench press for anything really, but certainly not for a 58-year-old runner. But what is important is that I can hold a moderate weight kettlebell in my hand and do the exaggerated step, and while I'm moving the off leg, I'm balancing on my foot for 3 to 5 seconds, and do that across the room and back, and do some kettlebell swings and that sort of thing. That's what I'm focusing on more now.
so so that's the strength stuff. So for the aerobic side of running, Do you have thoughts or advice about if somebody wants to build up a decent aerobic baseline so they don't feel like they're dying when they run?
Yeah, I think walking, I guess that was another thing too, is adding walking breaks. I didn't used to do that, and I do that more now. And really, when you add walking breaks, your average time doesn't even drop that much because you can run faster the rest of the time. So usually when I do a marathon, I will either, I think I usually walk, no, I forget what I do because the marathon that I usually do, I don't do tons. I usually do one marathon a year, occasionally two. But of course, over the last year, the two that I would have done have both been canceled.
Mhm.
But yeah, so maybe walk a minute each mile, roughly. Or if there's an aid station, I'll just do the calculation in my head. Like if the aid station's at mile 6.5, I'll walk at mile 5, and then I'll walk at 6.5, and then probably wait until mile 8 to walk. So it's not super rigid. But yeah, I think walking is really helpful, and mixing walking and running in is good. And also, some people are self-conscious. They think if they're walking, they're wimping out, but
Mhm.
no, they're not.
Yeah, and I do know that the Couch to 5K program does have you doing that mix of walking and running, and it's like run for 30 seconds or whatever to start. So it's just starting really simple and then walk for 2 minutes, and just you gradually just adjust that ratio to whatever you need it to be over time.
Right.
So, so let's talk about what is the appeal of competing in races? Because on one level, you're paying to run.
Yeah. Well, you get a T-shirt, and you also get. I have props ready. You get a finisher's medal too. Um, so I think someone who does the Couch to 5K really should have a 5K in mind. So yes, it does cost money, but I think it really helps with the motivation.
For sure.
And a 5K isn't usually that much. Marathons can be kind of expensive, and especially in a big city because they have to pay off-duty police officers to for guard the intersections and that sort of thing.
Mm.
But a 5K, I mean, a big park, you could do a 5K, or just run around Lake Harriet, for example. That's roughly 5K, and it's a path. You don't need to close anything off. But it really helps. It gives you motivation. All the people around will spur you to go a little bit faster. And also, with so many people around, there's probably someone who's running at about the same pace as you. If you're on the trail, especially if it's a nice summer day and you're running around Lake Harriet, uh, you've got some people that are just burning, right? They're going really fast, and you might feel self-conscious. Well, first off, that person going really fast probably doesn't care about you, probably cares a lot about themselves. Uh, yeah, maybe in a vain way, but they want to get their own workout in. But you don't realize that. You think, oh man, everybody's looking at me. But if there's a race, especially in a bigger city like the Twin Cities metro area, you're probably going to have a few hundred people. And then the fact that you get a T-shirt, and it's basically a finisher's prize, and you can wear that. And even, well, yeah, you're probably not going to come in last place, but again, even if you do, there are a lot of people that didn't run, and you beat all of them.
Right. Actually, I just noticed my wife has this thing on I'm at her desk right now, and it's even if you, no matter how
Yep,
slow you're going, you're lapping everybody on the couch. So, same
exactly. And
thing.
it's surprising too. So other people might say, well, I don't really look like a runner because maybe I'm a little bit overweight. Um, well, there are plenty of people. I remember I hadn't done a marathon yet, but this was back when I was living in Minneapolis, and a friend of mine was doing one. And we live near the Parkway, and that's the route of the Twin Cities Marathon. And my friend is super fit looking, and running in front of him was a person that stereotypically did not look fit at all. Yet that person was not that either of them cared,
Mhm.
but beating my fit looking friend. So someone would look at that person and say, you're not a runner, but almost certainly everybody that looked at that person and said that would be slower than the person.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Uh,
that self-consciousness thing you're touching on is huge because that applies to pretty much any aspect of fitness. Like I know it's been a huge thing with just a weightlifting gym. Just and I try to tell people that, like you're saying, nobody cares. Like they don't care about you, but that's a good thing because then you can just be invisible. And like the guys that actually know what they're doing in the gym, for the most part, are like, he's trying, or even if they are going to be an asshole and laugh at you, it's like they're not going to say anything to you. So,
right.
like
And
99% of the time, it's all in your own head.
and a lot of times the elite athletes, and I don't know if people at the gym, right, US Swim Fitness or whatever, are elite athletes, but the elite athletes, they respect the person who isn't great at it
Yeah, they're
and
happy
still
that
tries.
you're trying.
Right.
So,
I,
and
yeah, Bill Rogers was he was one of the first big time American runners. He was winning races in the 70s and 80s. But he said, and with all seriousness, he's impressed by the people that were near the end because he couldn't imagine running for 4 or 5 hours.
yeah,
He was finishing the races in 2:10, 2:20 a marathon. So his longest training runs were probably about 2 hours. So his slowest times were his slowest marathons. And here are these people that are running for twice the time he's running, and he was seriously impressed.
yeah. Well, I'm assuming they're probably moving more mass too.
Yeah, certainly they're moving more mass, and their bodies. I mean, let's face it, there are a lot of things that go into skill in any sport, and some people just are born the right way, and it's unfortunate some people are born the right way and don't utilize that. Other people aren't born the right way, whatever that means given the sport, but they do utilize it, and
Yeah.
the experts know that, and they also know that that person who's a slow runner is probably an excellent kindergarten teacher or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and there's a quote, I don't remember where I heard it, but it's the harder I work, the better my genetics get. And it's like, just not letting your body type be an excuse. Because it's like everybody's going to have different strengths and weaknesses based on their anatomy and genetics and whatever. And it's, if you like whatever, if you like martial arts, if you like running, if you like powerlifting, just find what you like and hopefully you have an aptitude for it. And usually there's going to be that overlap because you're going to like what you're naturally good at, probably.
Right. And that statement is accurate in a couple other ways too, or pseudo accurate, because there's epigenetics, which I don't really understand that much, but how certain genes are expressed and your behavior can actually change. Was your friend the dog there again?
Yeah.
Your behavior can change what genes are expressed in your kids. So the harder you work, the the more the better your genes become, because you might be, they're obviously not changing your genetics, but they could actually change what is inherited by your kids genetically, or what genes are expressed. But then also, the harder you work, your kids see that and are, then they do better. So that's obviously not a genetic difference, but they can inherit things other than genes. So the fact that my wife likes to swim and do yoga, and I like to run and do some other bike, and both of our kids are fit. And obviously, they got our genes, and I think our athletic genes, me, are probably middle of the road. Certainly not great, but not terrible. So they inherited that, but they also inherited our interest in keeping fit and other positive things as
Yeah.
well.
And you're able to pass on those values. Um,
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the description. Vitruvian Physique, he's a YouTuber. He has this really cool series that has you look at your body type to kind of figure out a score for your genetics for like 1 out of 100. Because you just mentioned you're like middle of the road, and that just made me think of that. Because when I went through it myself, I, without knowing it, I would have put myself at maybe a 60, which I mean, I know there's a psychological bias. Everyone thinks they're above average, but when I went through it, I also came out at around 60. But like, what's cool though is he applied his formula to like some celebrities, and Sylvester Stallone, he gave, I believe it was like a 57 or something. Um, so, and people consider him like a freaking amazing fitness guy, and he's about average. So it's him putting the work in. So like there's going to be, maybe you won the genetic lottery, more than likely you didn't, but you're also probably not at, like you're saying, you're not at zero either. You're probably in the middle, 40 to 60. And with that effort and stuff, you can make something cool happen.
Right. Yeah. Sylvester Stallone took his 56 or whatever it was and did the most with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and like even people talk about like your stereotypical, oh, he's got to have an 8 pack. And it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger had like just the 4 abdominal muscles, and that's just set up with how many cross tendon things are on your rectus abdominis. And it's just, you can't change that. So,
Right.
like you gotta, so anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about do you have thoughts about overcoming psychological resistance to running? Like we talked about self-consciousness, but there's also just like, I just don't want to run.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of the don't want to run is people are kind of fussy about the conditions outside. Um, so maybe pick a good time of day for you, and a good time of day might be in terms of good weather, but maybe if it's hot, that's running in the morning, but you're not a morning person, but then that would mean running in the evening. So there are two
On your
times a
time
day.
after work, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think changing your mindset and picking things that are optimal to you. Um, so I don't like to drive anywhere to exercise. I think that's kind of silly. Now, sometimes you need to do it, but people say, well, why don't you go running out in the trails or run out in the hills? Because we're in a valley, so I could drive. I mean, not super far, 6 miles or so, and get some nice hills. And I do occasionally do that, but I just say no. If I committed to that, I would hardly do it. But instead, I just go out my front door, and in a half a mile, I'm on a gravel trail, which is not Shangri-La or anything like that, but it's better than running on the street. So I think exploring the places around you and going to a place that's fun. Maybe you live by a park that's not gigantic, um, but run run a couple laps around the park, and now you're going to say, well, okay, if it's a small park, I've got to run 20 laps around the park, and that's not fun. But run a couple laps around the park and then do some push-ups, or maybe it's a park that has bars for kids, and do some pull-ups. And if you can't do many pull-ups, you go with the low bar and just keep your feet on the ground and do sort of a partial
Australian
pull-up.
pull-ups, or the whatever you
Yeah.
want. Mhm.
Yeah, so combine running with something else, or ride your bike someplace and then just run a mile out and a mile back to your bike. And you like biking, but you run, or you bike out and then you run a little bit. And then maybe you still hate it, but at least you've done that twice a week. Maybe you say, yeah, the running part of my biking day isn't so bad. So I think find aspects of it that are likable. Don't just say, and that was like my theory, 20 years ago, that I changed. If I can't do what I exactly have in mind to do, then I'm going to wait until tomorrow and do that plus what I was going to do tomorrow. And of course, that rarely happened.
Mhm.
So I found part of it that I liked. I was going to run 6 miles. I only have time to run maybe even two, but I'm going to run 2 of those miles pretty fast. So that does something, because I wouldn't have run the 6 miles at that same pace.
Right. Um, so, do you have thoughts on barefoot running? Like, have you done that at all?
I have not done that at all. My feet are kind of wimpy, but and also, yeah, I have really high arches, and I don't know what the implications of that are for barefoot running. one thing that I do know, shoes, shoes kind of shield your feet. And you've probably read the articles about barefoot running. The people that are super into it say, shoes are ruining our feet. Um, I don't know if that's the case, but if you say to yourself, I've got these shoes, and my other prop was I brought one of my shoes. I mean, if people haven't seen running shoes, they're pretty thick on the bottom. So you're tempted to really just, if you were barefoot and you put all your weight and just plop down on your heel, you do that once and you'd say, this is stupid. I'm not going to do it again. But you don't get that cue with the thickness here. So I think running on grass, so if you know your yard or a park that is super well maintained, or sneak onto an expensive golf course where the rich people have helped maintain it, I would not have a problem with someone doing some short barefoot running. And I think it would be beneficial because it's something different. But then you'd practice landing with the forefoot, or maybe the front of your foot, or maybe your entire foot.
Yeah,
And
like
that,
I've definitely, I haven't done it myself. I did, there is some Kickstarter for this pair of barefoot running shoes that are also um, like they have a video where they're walking on they have a board with some nails sticking up and they can walk on that. So it's like they're bulletproof. So something I'll be playing with this summer. Um, but I did read like you're going to have a shorter stride, and definitely, like you're saying, practice on grass and go short distance. Like, just it's something you need to build up because you've been wearing shoes for however many years of your life. So
yeah, there are people though, as recently as maybe the 70s, certainly the 60s, barefoot runners in the Olympics were being successful, maybe even winning.
hmm,
I'd have to look that up. Well, you can, yeah, I know you've got your team of researchers working on your podcast, so
right.
they can look that up.
Yeah.
But speaking of the finishing last or what have you, I don't remember again what year it was, but it was sometime in the 60s, a marathoner from some country who was fast. I don't know if he was predicted to win, but obviously he's fast if he's in the Olympics. That's pretty dumb. He was in the Olympics. I think he was a pretty good athlete. That's your researcher told me that one. But he got injured, and a lot of times these elite athletes, when they get injured, they will stop, and kind of makes sense because let's do it another day. Uh, but he kept going and finished in a time that would be unbelievable for anybody else. But clearly he was last, and maybe he was even almost upwards of 3 hours. And when he crossed the finish line, they asked him, "Why did you do it? Why didn't you just drop out? You weren't going to win." And he said, "My country didn't send me to win the marathon; they sent me to finish the marathon." So I think that should be everybody's um,
Mantra.
slogan.
Yeah.
Yeah, their mantra. And even those starting, right? My my genetics, my species didn't send me to perfect running instantly. Certainly didn't send me to win any race, but it sent me to be as fit as possible. And if running can be a part of that. So if all I do is twice a week in the middle of my bike ride, I do a 1 mile out and back run, then so be it.
Yeah. Um, well, and like I'm in more in the martial arts world, but Stephen Kesting says like you should be able to jog for 40 minutes as to give you like a baseline of cardio. So there are certain jujitsu people that say like to get better at cardio and whatever, you just do more jujitsu. I disagree with that. Like there is value to it, but I think doing other forms of cardio can also be beneficial. Um, so
Right, because in jujitsu, I mean, I don't know specifically the rules of that, but certainly in martial arts, there's a lot of unpredictability. And
mhm,
so doing, and I guess if you're practicing jujitsu, you're continually practicing within that world of unpredictability, but also working out different types of cardio. There's for your muscles unpredictability, right? Because you're moving one way with running, another way with biking, another way with some of your sort of standard or other cardio things, machines. your favorite machine, the elliptical.
Yeah.
You're not going to get any elliptical companies to sponsor you, I'm guessing.
I don't know. I just have had a hard time getting my heart rate up high enough, and that's something I haven't tried since college. So
Okay, yeah, and I know you're not a big elliptical fan.
yeah. But I will say I have not given it an honest shake. I've probably tried them maybe 5 times total in my life. So,
Hmm.
you
And
know,
if someone said to you, "I love the elliptical, and it's the binding of my training, and it's really helped me," you of course would say, "Great."
I mean, yeah, like I'm not anti elliptical. Like my anchor for my newscast, George, he does the elliptical all the time if he's not outside biking. So, I mean, it works for him. So, uh,
And he's a middle-aged stud muffin too. So those newsmen are, yeah, they look good.
yeah.
So
So this is kind of a left field question, but is there any dangers you've had experience dealing with, or how do you deal with them? Like, and that could be cars or wild animals or the, you know, the kidnapper.
mhm. uh that's, yeah, cars, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever had any negative experience. We live at the edge of the country, and some of the roads don't have great shoulders. So there's the occasional car that doesn't, they're 2-lane roads, one either way. So there's the occasional car that kind of thinks, I can stay in my lane, and then it's close, but I just stop, and there might be a big shoulder that I can't step into because it's a canal, but that hasn't been a big issue. The biggest issue, well, once when I was biking a dog, and I was going around the corner, and it was gravel, so I couldn't go really fast because I would have wiped out. But this big dog came and bit me in the calf, and it had this long tooth, and it punctured it. So it was small, but it was deep, and it really made me mad. So, and it went to a yard. So then I said, I'm going to go up to that house and knock on the door. So I walked towards the house, but then the dog bit me in the other leg. So then I left and called 911. Not that I was injured or anything like that, but if I was a little kid biking, or if I had a young child with me, that dog would have been really dangerous to the kid. And then another time when I was running, a dog bit me in the butt. But you know how running shorts are sort of designed, they're kind of silky, and then they have that built-in underwear that's also silky. So those two layers together have almost no friction. So I think because of that, the dog's mouth slipped and didn't actually bite in. But
Puncture.
again, I said, I got really mad. So it was by a house. So I knocked on the door to that house, and they said, well, that's not our dog. That's the people behind us. And then I said, oh, I'm going back there. Then I walked back there, and it was a trailer with all sorts of, a couple abandoned cars and rusted out appliances on the porch. And I just said to myself, oh, I think I'm good, and walked away.
Yeah.
I wasn't that mad anymore. Uh, but other than that, no. The only danger, as Rhonda, my wife, says, that the Google Earth photographers might come along sometime when I'm on a trail and relieve myself. But
Yeah. Well, and it's different too. Like you're like 5'8" or something, and a male, because I know
yeah,
it's a bigger concern for women being attacked or stalked or whatever when they're out running. So
5'8", I'm 6 feet,
you are
6'1".
6 feet.
I'm not coming back on your podcast again. You're underselling your guests. This is sports. Our younger son, he had a friend in college who was a rower, and I suspected that this was the case, but she said for all collegiate athletes, they exaggerate their size. So
Mm,
they listed her as 6 feet, and she was tall for a woman, but she was maybe 5'9" or 5'10".
yeah.
So
Well, and the hard thing is for me, like everybody's shorter than me, so I don't have a great frame of reference.
yeah, so
I got
so anyway, no, I'm
my
not
6'7"
5'8".
brother, and that's about it. Like,
No, sports wise, I can call myself 6'2" or 6'3", but
sure, yeah.
yeah.
on
But
the
yeah, that's
professional
correct. Yes,
wrestling, they're all like 250 pounds and
right. But no, I read Runner's World magazine, and one of the fairly recent issues had a bunch of articles about that. And somebody they took a poll, how many women, how many of you have felt endangered when you've been running within the past? And it was a pretty short period of time, month, 2 months, and the vast majority of them said yes. And then they
yeah.
asked the same thing to men, and of course the vast majority of them said no.
Yeah, so it's just not something that we're even conscious of usually. So
Right. No, I think the only heckling too, and heckling is mentally taxing, not physically taxing, although you don't know at the time that it's not going to be. But I think I was heckled once because I was super pale, but
oh yeah,
literally that is it. Nothing. I've had no worries.
yeah. I remember being heckled once. I was doing beach sprints and like Rocky 3. So, and she was my girlfriend at the time, my wife Tori. She was just kind of sitting in the shade and chilling. And I like the first time I ran, and it was this girl going, "Run, Forrest, run!" And then I was like, I just made the mental decision, like, I'm not gonna let that stop me from doing it. And then she kept yelling that every time I was running back and forth, and it's like the other people kind of, she's the asshole. It's not me being made fun of. Um,
Right.
and then one of the times I was resting, there's this little kid, and it turned out that the girl that was yelling at me, she was his older sister, and then she was like 12 or 14, and I was like, okay, now I'm really glad I didn't let her stop. It's like I was, I'll say 25-ish at the time. It's like, let this little teenage girl shame me or whatever for working out. It's like, screw that.
Right. Hmm.
But but it's interesting. It's like the fact that you said that, it's like it does affect you, and I think, like you're saying, like everybody has that level of self-consciousness. So
Yeah, and with the heckling, some things get better as you improve, but I think with running, sometimes the heckling can get worse because someone who's not in shape, and it's great that the person is running, but they're not really noticed. But some super good looking person, people are going to turn towards that person and look, and then just like when we were little kids, we would pick on someone because we didn't know how to properly express our emotions, right? Well, I mean, here's an adult that doesn't know how to properly express things, so then they heckle.
mm,
So, so when you improve in your running, sometimes you open yourself up to a different level of, I don't want to say self-consciousness, but you bring into the environment something else that's negative. A lot of things become positive when you go from being less fit to more fit, but that might be something, I don't know, maybe the comments later on, people can talk about that. But as people, I think when people are less fit, they're worried, self-conscious about people looking at them and saying something to them, but they're sort of ignored,
mm,
right? And people just aren't, they don't really care about an underperformer because they don't stand out. But someone who's a supreme performer is going to get heckled more. I mean, even the extreme, you go to a professional sporting event, you're heckling the best players, right? You're not heckling the worst players. Um, and yeah, I've never quite figured that out.
yeah,
Whenever a superstar comes to town, I always think the best thing to do is to treat them as you would treat just the run of the mill player. So instead of booing someone, so when LeBron James comes to town, don't boo him because then you're calling him out. Treat him like you would treat the worst player on the bench, which may be clap politely if he gets a basket, or just do nothing, keep eating your food. So that should be how you treat every runner, just how you treat anybody who's putting in an effort. Maybe applaud, but most likely do nothing and worry about yourself instead.
sure,
And that's what the runner would want you to do, is worry about yourself instead.
yeah. Well, now you're gonna get fans of the podcast driving up next to you with signs cheering you on.
All right. I saw you on Sign of the Times. Why isn't the Prince song one of them?
Yeah. Um,
I
so
said, it's Sign of Fitness, you dummy.
sign of good health, but that's okay. um, so you talked a little bit about running shorts. So can you confirm or deny the rumor of the shorter the shorts, the better the runner?
Well, I wear fairly long shorts, so uh, yeah, no, I don't think so. Actually, I don't know if I can confirm or deny it, but seems to be a disproportionately high number of older guys who are fit, but who wear short shorts. So if you look, you see a fit 70-year-old runner, he probably has the short shorts on.
Yeah.
So yes, but I think younger, yeah, I buy good shorts that are comfortable, but I don't buy super expensive shorts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some good low cost athletic wear is the C9 stuff from Target.
Sure.
And so that would be a good place to start because there are Targets everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You can try it on, you can look at it. It's pretty cheap, but it's good. I mean, I've gone on fairly long trail runs where, except for my shoes, my socks, my shorts, my t-shirt were all C9. And if you're 8 miles away from something, you don't want to be chafing or have uncomfortable clothing.
Yeah.
So if someone's looking at some, they need to sponsor your podcast as well. This is, yeah,
So, well,
your
here's
Sina yada yada, whatever the name is, podcast.
um, speaking of sponsorship, so is there anything else you carry when you're running? Like you say, you listen to podcasts. So, like, what do you have on you?
So yeah, my phone and then headphones. And in terms of if I'm going to run far, I have a one of those Camelbacks, again, potential sponsor, but something a little backpack with a bladder in it, and Camelback happens to be one of the brands.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going really far, and really far means I'll be maybe gone for over 2 hours, which now as I get older isn't as far as it used to be, but really, really long in time. And it's hot. I'll use that. And that has a pocket too. So I might bring some sort of energy bar. And I'm
Sure.
not super fussy with that. I like a bunch of them, but you've already got a sponsor list that, so I won't even mention any of those brands. But if I'm
They
my
have
third
their
prop,
chance.
that's right. My third prop, I got this fairly recently. So a water bottle, but one of these cloth handles. So you're not just gripping it the whole time. You can put your hand through there and kind of relax. And
Yeah.
there's a pocket here that is useless. I actually like running with shorts that have pockets because I can put my phone in my pocket. I've tried the armband, the super tight armbands, but I don't really like those. And I like to fast forward through the ads. Um,
Yeah.
but of course, sponsors, if you sponsor this, I
We
will
will
not fast forward
absolutely
through these
click on
ads.
everything.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I just like
100% click rate.
keep my phone in my pocket. And I also have a perpetually runny nose, and I don't like those gross people that, plug one nostril and blow their nose on the road. So I usually have a couple of Kleenex with me.
I know like bikers, they have like the snot gloves you can wipe your hand on. Um,
Oh, yes, if I wear gloves, that's if it's cold, yes, I do. Any gloves can become snot gloves.
that's true. So you don't even need the sponsored snot gloves. So,
No, that can be your company. The sign of good health snot gloves.
clear sinuses.
Yeah, Sina says, clear your Sina says.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you sell in your store? What merch can you comp me with?
Yeah. Um,
I've been drinking lemon drink from this generic cat mug. Do we have a sign of good health mug?
no, not yet. That'll be next week. You missed out.
Okay, well, Yeah, I'll invest in your merch store.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh, I lost that one question I had. But do you have any goals, like running a certain marathon, or, I mean, you kind of hinted at course times are kind of a thing of the past, but
Right. I still, once when I was injured, I walked most of a marathon. I think it was when I had a herniated disc in my back. And so I couldn't run for a while, but I did other non-impact things. Then finally I could walk. And that one took me 6 hours and 20 minutes or something. But I still haven't ran a marathon in over 5 hours. But so that's to keep under 5 hours for as long as possible.
mm,
Maybe do an ultra marathon, not a super crazy ultra marathon, but the farthest I've ever gone for my 50th birthday, so 8 years ago, when I was 40, when I turned 49, I said for my 50th birthday, I'm going to run 50 miles. Well, the marathon I usually do is about a month and a half before my birthday. So after doing that, I thought, well, crap, if I'm going to run 50 miles, I need to really keep training at this level and go up. But 50K, I thought, well, if I was born in Europe, I would not have dreamed to run 50 miles on my 50th birthday. I would have said, I'm going to run 50K. So I became European, and because then I could take a break for a week or two after the marathon and then just kind of quickly step up to a long run of maybe 25K. But yeah, so I have, I guess anything over a marathon is considered an ultra marathon.
right.
So yeah, I usually take one running step past the finish line and say, did an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
No, I do even before that because I don't start at the start line, right? The
Yeah.
fast people do that. So yeah, every one of my marathons is an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
But yeah, on my 50th birthday, I ran 50K. And ironically, I was listening to podcasts, and on one of the podcasts, I was listening to, I think it was Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, the comedian Bobcat Goldthwait. Have you heard of him?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, his birthday is the exact same day as mine, day, month, and year.
Hmm.
So on my 50th birthday,
What happened? You
I was
turned out to
list
be you.
yeah. On my 50th birthday, I was listening to Bobcat Goldthwait, who was also turning 50 that same day, although it was, of course, recorded, so it was before his 50th birthday. But
Hmm.
I thought that's pretty good. And so yeah, maybe run an ultra marathon. I'm trying to think. Maybe go do more marathon vacations. So I've ran I've ran the same marathon now 19 times. It's the one that starts in our small town, but I've really only run 4 other ones. So maybe come back to the Twin Cities. I think I'd like to do that, do the Twin Cities Marathon in October, because I'm pretty soon I'll have lived in Washington for as long as I've lived in Minnesota, but still, that's where I spent the first 31 years.
Hmm.
So I think going back and doing the Twin Cities Marathon, which is a really nice course, that would probably be, if I had a goal, that would probably be my goal. Will you come up and cheer me on?
I don't think for the whole 3 hours, but sure.
Will you encourage the Sign of Good Health Nation to cheer me on?
Yeah. We'll get all the fans out. We'll be on mile marker. We'll let you know what mile marker we're at.
Okay. Sign a mile one.
Yeah. So we'll do 2 more questions. Um, so you mentioned you like doing podcasts when you're running or listening to podcasts, not doing one. Hey guys, we're on miles. um, so I'm just wondering about, like, there's music, there's podcasts, and then there's just enjoying the quiet, and being contemplative. Like, I'm thinking about, like, and my experience is much more with weightlifting. Like, I can't do a podcast when I'm weightlifting. Like, there's no way I would be able to comprehend it. But I also, so it's usually music for me, but I do also really enjoy, like, I've had some intense workouts where you're kind of like working through emotional stuff, or sometimes even like it kind of feels like a spiritual experience. um, I will say sometimes it gets kind of you go to dark places when you're doing that, but I think there's a lot of value to that though.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you've had anything similar with that with running.
No, well, in terms of the podcast, yeah, I'm not really that much of a music person. I mean, I'll listen to music, of course, given the obscure sticks reference earlier, but yeah, I like listening to podcasts because it allows me to learn something. And being a professor, you know, I like to read, I like to learn new things. And you talked about comprehending it. I actually listen to podcasts at twice speed so I can listen to more of them. And when I'm running, my brain seems to be going faster because when I'll listen to it at regular speed, it seems slow.
Mm.
Um, I think I'm pretty sure I have at least a minor form of ADHD. So I do like to do a lot of different things at once or be bored. Um, but yeah, there are times when I will also think about things. And if, yeah, there's some emotional issues that I've had or, you know, arguments or something like that, I'll still listen to the podcast, but then I'll realize that for the last 10 minutes, I haven't heard any of it. So
Mm.
then I'll shut it off for a while and then go back and listen again. But yeah, I know there are people that like to run and they'll, you know, their music set lists that match with running because you want songs that sort of
Match
mimic
your
your K.
cadence. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want death metal because then you're out of breath after, or thrash metal or something. You're out of breath after 5 minutes. But
But
you
it was
also don't,
worth it.
yeah. But yeah, you also don't want to necessarily listen to the three tenors because then you're running through molasses. But with podcasts, yeah, it just works out well for me. And I have thought of doing a podcast as well, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that. Figure out something. There's so many podcasts out there. I would want to do something that would stand out, something as good as Sign of Good Health. But yeah, I haven't thought of that yet. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm on a guest here to
What
bask in
was
the.
what was What's Up Ellensburg?
What's that?
I thought you had What's Up Ellensburg, or is that
Well,
more college?
yeah, I've done a few episodic podcasts, but I don't have a regular series. I have
Okay,
my astronomy column is called What's Up in the Sky. So that's related to Ellensburg. You
sure.
might be thinking of that.
I,
Thousands of people around the world are at any given time.
yeah.
And I don't have any sponsors either.
Yeah. Well, I will clarify that what got me, what kind of changed my mind with actually enjoying cardio is I had George St. Pierre's biography on Audible, and I would only listen to it when I was doing cardio on the bike. Like I had this interval program I was doing, and my brain would fight me so hard, like because I work out before and then I do the bike, and it's like, oh, you're tired, you don't want to do it, and then I would bike, and it's like, oh, you've been going for 5 minutes, that's good enough, or 10 minutes, or whatever, and like I think it was, I know it was a Wednesday, either the second or third week, and I was doing like Monday to Friday, 5 days, and it was the Wednesday, the second or third week that I actually noticed that my brain wasn't fighting me, and then it gradually, that started to be the part of the workout I was looking forward to because I was really enjoying the book. So,
Mhm.
so props to George St. Pierre for that.
So, so the moral of the story is GSP got you to like cardio?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, yeah. Well, that's good, and that kind of relates back to what you asked before about what about people who are just kind of down on running. Find
Mhm.
some aspect of it that interests you,
Yeah. Well, and like
if
for me, the exercise bike, I really liked that. Running, we do have a treadmill. Uh, so I kind of force myself to run. I try to shoot for, my standard running workout is once every couple weeks, and I go for like 20 minutes as kind of just to kind of reestablish or maintain that baseline of running. But um, otherwise, it's like I'll do interval stuff again every intermittently. So, but yeah, let's do that for the last question. Like, just advice for somebody getting into running.
So I think the first thing is to get a good pair of shoes. So I would definitely go to a running shoe store. Um, I do that occasionally now. I just, I know what I like and I'll buy it. Either I like Brooks shoes, either Brooks Adrenaline or Brooks Ghost. Brooks is actually a Seattle company. It's a small company. I think, yeah, they don't do shoes for fashion, right? Like Nike.
Sponsorships.
Yeah, Nike, most of their, that's right. Well, you're not going to get Nike now as a sponsor based on what I'm about to say next. But Nike, I think a lot of their sales are just for show. Um, but Brooks is, yeah, they focus on running shoes. So definitely go to a running store and get a good pair of shoes. And most running stores will watch your gait, and they will not care if you just starting and maybe your running form is kind of funny, or they'll say, we'd like to analyze your gait, and you say, what's my gait, right? They
Yeah.
want you to do it, if only for the selfish reason that you'll keep buying shoes from them. But it's beyond that. They want people to be in shape in general. So get a good pair of shoes. I think get get some good running clothes, and by good I mean something that is comfortable and wicks away the moisture. So you don't want cotton, and good socks as well. Socks were probably the last article of running clothing that I respected, because obviously shoes I knew, shorts I didn't want chafing, t-shirt I didn't really want chafing, and socks were kind of an afterthought. But then after I realized, wait, there's chafing there too, then I quickly got to those. Um, and I usually buy those things on clearance sale, because so I'll buy inexpensive stuff, but it might be last year's, or maybe it's an ugly color or something like that.
Sure.
Who cares about that? But if you are someone that cares about that, then yeah, buy clothes that you think will help you look good and feel good. And really, running is an inexpensive sport. I buy a pair of shoes. So I buy shoes that are maybe $110 or so, roughly, maybe 3 times a year. And then occasionally I'll buy a new pair of shorts. So I'm sure I spend at most a few $100s on, well, yeah, at most a few $100, $500 on the hobby a year. So it's really inexpensive. And then find a place that you like to run that's fairly close by. Don't think of going to the ideal place that's across town,
Mhm.
because you're not going to do it. Go to the park near you and run around there, at least to start with. You're not going to want to run super far anyway. Or ride your bike to a place that's a little bit farther away. Don't forget to bring your bike lock your bike up, and then do a little bit of running. Well, and I seriously mean that, because if I'm going out for a long bike ride, I don't bring my bike lock, because I'm not going to stop. And if I truly did get hurt, I would call Rhonda and she would come and pick me up. And if I truly, that didn't happen, I would just put my bike in a ditch. I'd hide it in the bushes or something like that. So, but yeah, if you are going to run, yeah, bring your lock. So that would be the advice. First advice, good shoes at a running store, and ask them a lot of questions, because they want to help you. Uh, and maybe buy some clothes there. But again, sponsor alert, at Target, the C9 clothing is quite good and inexpensive. And again, ubiquitous, because they're, especially in the Twin Cities area. Of course, you've got listeners all over the world. I
Yeah.
don't know if your listeners in Mauritania or Chad, if they have Targets around, but
Yeah.
other people do. So that's some good stuff. If you're at Target and you see C9 stuff on sale, pick it up.
Yeah. Well, and I know like there's the psychological thing where like buying something kind of tricks your brain into thinking that you're actually doing it. So um, it might be good to take what you got and run 5 minutes, 10 minutes,
Mhm.
whatever it is, the couch to 5K type thing. Um, just so you're not, like you listen to this podcast and you're super inspired and you go buy your shoes, but then, oh, it doesn't get here for a week because of shipping. And
Yeah, that's true. Um, Yeah, certainly nobody's going to get hurt if they run in basketball shoes for a couple minutes, then walk a few minutes. I mean, you could run barefoot, right, with nothing. But yeah, any shoes, dress shoes. I mean, there are people that run marathons in dress shoes, right? They're world records, fastest marathon in a tuxedo or something like that. But yeah, and I do think though, if you only buy one thing, it should be shoes. And that's the nice thing about a running shoe store is that they've got lots of them in stock, so you're going to walk out with a pair of shoes.
Yeah, that's true. My brain went to going online for some reason, but that's
Yeah,
just
but I do think that, and if your thousands of listeners in small towns too, then that might be the case. There might not be a store, but
right.
even our town of 20,000, we have an outdoor store that sells running shoes. So certainly, if you're way up in the Boundary Waters, I don't know if they would have running shoe stores in Ely or, well, Two Harbors in Duluth. Of course, they've got Grandma's Marathon. But
Yeah.
yeah, do it. Oh, well, and you can even walk, right? So while you're waiting for your shoes, if you do order them on Amazon or whoever, wherever, or brooksrunning.com, I believe. I don't think it's just Brooks. I think it's Brooks Running. And they have lots of good sales as well. And in fact, I would probably do something like that. Again, you really need to push Brooks now for a sponsor, but
Yeah.
they're going to, and other shoe companies do have this as well. They'll have some questions that will lead you. How many miles a week do you run?
Mhm.
Uh, are you flexible? The Brooks site, you put your hand flat on the table and you lift up your finger, and if you can lift it up more than 45 degrees, it deems you in general more flexible. And then if you can't, then you're inflexible. I know it's obviously a small data point, but at least it's a data point.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like what if I'm at 45 degrees? But anyway.
Yeah. Or what if you don't know what 45 degrees is? I think there's a picture though, and they have a little drawing of an angle.
Well, the Sign of Good Health audience is a higher tier of listeners. So
Yes.
we got the elite smart people listening. So.
Well, they're not listening anymore after the guest you had this week.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Uh, so for those who are still listening, we'll wrap it up. So thanks for being on the show. It's a lot of fun. And tune in for we'll let you know when Bruce gets his podcast going and have him on hopefully soon again.
Yes, I can be back and talk more about other music and exercise. The intersection between science, music, and exercise.
Yeah. Well, I was wanting to talk about, like you mentioned, the genetics and stuff, and that could easily be its own podcast, but we'd have to do some research first. So
Right.
we'll get our
But yeah,
team.
I do like the idea, the quote that you had, that how you change. Well, what was it about changing your
The harder
genetic?
you work, the better your genetics get.
Right. And that's a pithy line, but it has two accurate parts, like we talked about epigenetics and just how your kids inherit more than just the genes. They inherit your habits,
Mhm.
and both good and bad.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, guys.